So this film features a few familiar faces like Stefan Top Boy and Jason. You might know him from Top Boy as well, but he was mostly in Summer House.
The movie begins by following a kid named Richard, aka Reeks. He walks through the schoolyard with a little swagger in his step. You can tell he's really trying to portray a thought persona. He approaches a table with 3 of his friends seated. We'll call them Ed, Ed, and Eddie. They exchange some light banter, but when they try to invite him to come hang out with them on the yard, he makes up an excuse for why he can't join them. They push back a little bit regarding why he's always ghosting them, but he doesn't budge and persists about having other things to do. The school bell rings and everyone goes home. As Reeks approaches his home, he makes a quick stop to change his outfit, all in an attempt to make sure his parent doesn't think of him different. You see, Richard becomes Reeks when he gets around his friends at school. When he comes back home, he goes back to being Richard, a straight-A school kid, speaks properly, and wears matching outfits with his brother. Imagine Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, with a whole different persona as Will Smith while with his friends at school, but goes back home to being Carlton again. Similar to Fresh Prince, Richard lives in a fancy house with well-to-do parents, who you'd compare to Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil. Reeks walks in the room to greet his parents before heading down to the basement to catch up with his older sister, Esther. You see, Esther is aware of the 2 personas Reeks has been juggling and is very much against it, advising him to come clean to his friends. But Reeks is addicted to his identity crisis and feels alive when hanging out with his less fortunate friends, living the wannabe gangster life. Reeks considers it for a while, but then decides to continue living his lifestyle as is. In this scene, you can see the contrast between Reeks' lifestyle and that of Ed, Ed, and Eddie. While Reek and his dad drives past the neighborhood in a mint BMW, the Ed trio are on the streets committing petty crimes. Unfortunately, on this day, Ed spots his friend Reeks in the fancy BMW. The next day, Ed confronts Reeks about what he saw the previous day, but Reeks denies it and rebuttals that his dad drives a dinger and not a fancy vehicle. Eddie jumps in asking him why he takes a different bus than them if he lives on the ends. But yet again, full of excuses, Reeks has just the right response. Eventually, they invite him out again, which he turns down with, you guessed it, another excuse. Ed smells something fishy, but he hesitates to say anything and just let things slide this time. Ed, and Eddie are at the mall over the weekend when they spot Reeks in a boutique shopping with his mom and siblings. Ed calls Reeks' phone to make sure he wasn't mistaken, only to hear Reeks with a fresh new harsh accent. Reeks, unaware that they were watching him from the window of the shop, gave Ed, and Eddie more excuses for why he couldn't hang out with them. They follow him home to see the extent of Richard's lies, only to find out that this poser lived a very privileged life in a fancy estate. It's now clear to them that Reeks is really Richard, who has been faking being a roadman. They plot a plan to teach him a lesson on Monday at school. Ed, and Eddie are waiting for Reeks at school on Monday. He walks up to them expecting love, but then they proceed to rob him from his roadman gear he had so much pride in. He was completely in shock, but he attempts to finesse his way out of the situation. The Ed trio had had enough this time. At this point, the persona of Reeks had completely washed away, and Richard was left standing there without a jacket, a hat, or a cell phone. Although they let him go unharmed, they made sure to give him a pep talk about snitching right after emptying the cash from his pockets. Richard walks home, slightly depressed from what had happened. He walks through the door into his sister's arms, who was the only one who would understand what he had been through.
The moral of the story is, when Billy Badass finally meets the real Billy Badass, he's probably gonna realize that he might be better at math